So I think in terms of risk mitigation, we've put a number of processes in place. I think I highlighted earlier on the DVP model, which ensures that you reduce counterparty risk. So that's number one. And then number two, what we also require in terms of participation on the VFX is that you are then required, if you are buying shares, to pre-fund your positions before you commit a transaction onto the VFX. So that then makes sure that.
So what technology does is that it increases transparency and usability as well as accessibility. So the platforms like the Data Direct that you mentioned, what it does is that it gives our investors access to market reports on a daily basis. So if you sign up for your Data Direct, you are able to access market reports each and every day. You are able to access the price sheet so that you can be able to see the prices of all the companies. It also gives you access to historic information.
So what it does then, that it then eliminates counterparty risk, where if your funds are to remain with someone beyond the regulated settlement cycle or beyond the expected settlement date, then you risk having that person perhaps losing the funds or not being able. That's why we insist on delivery versus payment. So basically, that's how the clearing and settlement works. But so what you also then have to look at is to say, how does the life cycle of a trade flows through the ecosystem? So you are.
And then in terms of some people think that it's very difficult to meet personnel from the exchange. We are trying as much as possible to be available. So our VFX business development team always stands ready to meet with any potential clients that wants to meet with us. We are ready to provide them with guidance. We are ready to hold their hands throughout the listing process. So if anyone is thinking about listing on the VFX, I think we can be able to assist them. They can email us on our email address, which is operations@vfx.exchange, or you can even walk into our offices. We'll be able to.
Good day and welcome to the ACN podcast here on the ACN network. I am Anna Shea, your host for today, and I am at the Victoria Falls Stock Exchange head offices as we discuss very informative matters. I am here today with two very important guests. On my right, we have Mr. Hilarious Karani, the head of VFX Depository. On my left, we have Ms. Sandra Munyoro, business development specialist. I will give them time to tell you more about themselves as specialists in VFX company. Mr. Hilarious Karani, kindly go ahead and tell us more about you and the work you do here at VFX.
Indeed. Thanks very much, Anna Shea. My name is Hilarious Karani, as you have rightly said. I joined the capital markets in 2008. And then I was at Old Mutual Custodial Services. It was Old Mutual Custodial Services then, and then it then moved on to CABS. So I would say I've had the opportunity of experiencing both the physical environment in terms of the trading and settling of shares on the ZSC then, as well as the settlement now in dematerialized shares in electronic form. So I am very much versed with the processes that are involved in terms of the clearing and settlement of shares. And I recall then when I started at Old Mutual Custodial Services, we would be delivering physical shares to brokers and them delivering physical shares to us. So it was pretty much a physical market. And then, of course, in 2013, then we had our first CSD coming into the market. I was still with CABS then, and I then moved on to Standard Chartered Bank Security Services, where I was responsible for managing clients as well as corporate actions processing, again within the capital markets and the clearing and settlement cycle. Area. And then from there, I then moved on to Zimbabwe Stock Exchange, which I joined last year as the head of depositories, covering both VFX and ZSE. But obviously, today we are talking about VFX and celebrating the number of years we have been operating as a market. So I would say that's pretty much about myself in terms of my experience in the capital markets and where we are in terms of this discussion. Thank you very much, Anas.
Thank you so much for that very insightful introduction. Miss Sandra, may you kindly introduce yourself?
Thank you so much, Anashe, for having me today. As you have already said, my name is Sandra Mnyoro, and I'm the Business Development Specialist for the Victoria Falls Stock Exchange. I joined the Victoria Falls Stock Exchange in 2021, just after its launch in 2020. So my work basically involves research and development of new products. The market has seen the introduction of your exchange-traded funds, your real estate investment trusts, your depository receipts. Those are some of the products that we have worked on, from the introduction of the VFX and up to date. So basically, my work involves research and development of these new products.
Thank you so much for your introduction. I'm feeling very small here because these two are very educated in the stock exchange market. So we are excited to start. We can start with Mr. Hilarious Karani here. We have some questions we would love to ask you, so we may know more about VFX and the kind of work VFX is doing. Yes. Our first question for you, can you briefly explain how the clearing and settlement framework on VFX works?
Mm-hmm. No, thank you very much, Anashe. So, in terms of clearing and settlement, currently we are on T+2. That is the settlement cycle we are operating on the VFX. We were on T+3, and we successfully migrated to T+2 in April of this year. So I think that's where we are in terms of the settlement cycle. So what it means is that when you trade your shares, for example, today, you expect to receive your funds 2 days from now. And previously, you would have received your funds 3 days from the day you trade. So we have reduced that. And it was quite a long process because we had to engage the market participants, make sure that we've got all the market participants on board, our settlement participants, which include banks and also our stockbrokers. So everyone had to be on board, including the regulator, and all the other interested participants. And so we moved to T+2 in April this year. So that's how we are settling. Then in terms of, there's what they call a deliver versus payment model. So there are basically 3 models. You've got your DVP1, where settlement is on a gross basis, both securities and cash. Then you've got DVP2, where settlement is on a gross basis in terms of securities. Then cash, you settle on a net basis. Then DVP3 being the advanced one. We are in the middle. We are on DVP2. So you settle your securities on a gross basis, and then cash is settled on a multilateral net basis through our participating settlement banks. So we currently have got 5 custodian banks in the market. There's KEBS, there's Stanbic, ZB, and there's FBC. We had Standard Chartered as part of the contingent, but they moved out of the market last year. So that's where we are. And so when we are talking about DVP, so it's basically delivery versus payment. You deliver your securities and you get your cash. So it's supposed to be simultaneous in the sense that when you are moving your securities at the same time, you are expecting to receive your cash. So it's not that you move securities today and you receive your cash tomorrow. No, you have to receive both securities and cash simultaneously. That is the expectation. And I think that's what we are trying to do for the VFX. So what it does then, that it then eliminates counterpart risk, where if your funds are to remain with someone beyond the regulated settlement cycle or beyond the expected settlement date, then your risk having that person perhaps losing the funds or not being able. That's why we insist on delivery versus payment. So basically, that's how the clearing and settlement works. But so what you also then have to look at is to say, how does the life cycle of a trade flows through the ecosystem? So you are saying when you execute your trade on T+0, I mean, this is capital markets language, but it's basically the day that you execute a trade on the stock exchange, on VFEX as it were. Then from there, the transaction flows in a technical basis from the trading system. Then it comes into our depository system, where the clearing process for that trade then begins. So by clearing, we are saying our clearing participants must make sure that that the trade is good for settlement, both in terms of the availability of cash in the first instance, if you are from the buying side. Then obviously there are validation checks within the trading system where the system is able to tell whether someone has got the securities or not, and the trade will not pass through those validations. So once the clearing has been done, so the clearing part, it is done by our clearing participants, our clearing and settlement participants, as I have alluded earlier on, the brokers and the custodians. So you will find that the approach in the market is that an investor coming into the market must appoint a custodian who becomes the clearing participant. They hold the client's securities account as well as the cash account. So in that regard, they are then able to clear a transaction that is coming through from that investor. So once the transaction has been cleared, we ask them to commit the transaction on the CSD system. Mind you, the movement of securities happens on the CSD system, which I am responsible for as the head of the depository. And so when they are happy that the transaction is good for settlement, and obviously they will done the necessary AML checks as part of client onboarding and so on and so forth, we expect the clearing participants to do that. And we do checks from time to time to make sure that they've got sufficient KYC for our participants on the exchange, for our investors. So when they are happy, they commit the transaction for settlement, and then the depository picks the transaction from there. And then when the settlement day comes, we do the necessary funding arrangements with the central bank. Currently, all our trades are settled through the central bank. So our 5 custodian banks, who are registered commercial banks, are also members of the RBZ. So we settle through the RBZ. And so that brings another level of comfort to the investors to know that their funds are settled through the RBZ. There are various requirements that we are supposed to comply with in terms of our CSD rules, and these requirements are also superintended by the RBZ themselves. For example, one of the principal requirements is that we ask every other clearing and settlement participant who is a bank to lodge collateral with the RBZ to make sure that they guarantee the settlement of trades that are coming through them. And so I think from a risk management perspective, our investors will be able to know that it will be in the very remotest of circumstances to have a situation where a trade fails to settle because of funding. There are mechanisms in place to ensure that funding is adequate through our pre-funding requirements in the market, and so on and so forth. I would want to go to the next question, but otherwise, that's how we run the settlement, clearing and settlement process for the VFX, as the VFX depository.
All right. Thank you so much for that detailed response on the clearing and settlement framework in VFX company. Ms. Sandra, what do you think makes VFX an attractive listing destination for companies here in Zimbabwe and all over?
So VFX offers a USD-based capital raising platform. So what this simply means is that when a company wants to raise, they can come on the VFX and they'll be able to raise that money in US dollars. Secondly, there are various incentives that are offered by the VFX, including a lower 5% withholding tax for your foreign investors. There's also no capital gains with withholding tax on VFX. The trading costs are overall the round trip the round trip trading costs on VFX, they are very low. And also, there is guarantee of repatriation of monies. Is either for investors, when you invest on VFX and you want to receive your money offshore, you can receive that money offshore. If you are a company and you raise your money on the VFX, you are also able to repatriate that money offshore. Of course, there are requirements that are there. For example, you have to seek just a once-off approval from the RBZ for you to be able to repatriate that money out of Zimbabwe. But the long and short of it is that the exchange controls on the VFX, they are very much flexible. And also the VFX is now being regulated by the Victoria Falls International Offshore Financial Services Center. This will also make VFX to be more attractive in terms of the requirements that are there in the Offshore Financial Services Center itself.
Thank you so much for that. Mr. Hilarious, what risk mitigation mechanisms are in place to safeguard investors now?
Indeed, thank you very much for that question. So I think in terms of risk mitigation, we've put a number of processes in place. I think I highlighted earlier on the DVP model, which ensures that you reduce counterparty risk. So that's number one. And then number two, what we also require in terms of participation on the VFX is that you are then required, if you are buying shares, to pre-fund your positions before you commit a transaction onto the VFX. So that then makes sure that we don't have a situation where we fail to settle a trade because funding is not there or because funding has been received late. Investors will be worried by that, making sure that if I'm selling my shares, I will get my funds on time. So we have got that pre-funding requirement, which every other investor is supposed to abide with, whether they are a local investor or they are a foreign investor. So that's number two. Then I think in terms of also our client onboarding processes, like I highlighted earlier on, the requirement is that an investor must be managed through a custodian. They must appoint a custodian to manage their safekeeping account, to manage their cash account. So all these custodians, for your comfort, they are regulated entities. Our banks are regulated by the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe. At the same time, they are licensees of the Securities and Exchange Commission. That also applies to the stockbrokers that also act as custodians. So from that perspective, you find that in investors' affairs in the right hands, and these are licensed institutions that are required to abide with the regulatory provisions. They are required to abide by our CSD rules. They are required to abide by the requirements of the International Financial Services Center, which is now our new regulator on the VFX. So that also is an additional layer, of risk mitigation. But most importantly is that our system is a robust system. It has got maker-checker controls, sufficient maker-checker controls in place to make sure that investor assets are protected. For example, if a trade is to settle, then from a CSD side, we must be able to track that trade to say, has it been properly instructed? And shares cannot move without a proper client instruction. So that also applies even from the trading level to say brokers participating on our exchange, they do so on the basis of valid client instruction. That's why you find that amongst our rules as a CSD, if a broker trades outside the bounds of limits imposed by their client, then that becomes an issue where we may be required to penalize a broker if a trade fails to settle. So there are a number of mechanisms that we have in place that ensures that investor assets are protected and that investors don't suffer unnecessary prejudice from a CST perspective. Yeah, so I hope I've done justice to the risk mitigation mechanisms in place. Yeah, so that's how we make sure that investors are protected.
Yes, you definitely have done justice to the question. I wanted to find out, is there a real life example, maybe of a successful risk mitigation strategy that took place here at VFX?
Okay, so risk management is an ongoing process. So clearly, you can't then single out a particular, incident or event. It will be difficult, really, to do that. But what I can say is that we have had instances where, because like I highlighted earlier on, we've got our brokers representing the investors, as it were, whether from a trading perspective or from a custody perspective. So we've had situations where one broker, for example, they fail to fund a position on time, or rather, their underlying client fails to fund a position on time. So that clearly then affects the investor at the other side of the transaction, because we are expecting the transaction to settle within the given time frames. If it is T+2, then it must settle within T. So we have had instances like that, perhaps a repeat situation, but we have had to say, to the affected counterparties, with one incident we have had to penalize so that we make sure that that situation does not repeat itself. But clearly, it's all to do with trying to protect the integrity of the market, as well as to give our investors the comfort to know that we are, as much as possible, trying to take care of their affairs, to make sure that they get value from their transaction. So those are the sort of situations that we face. But what I can assure you is that from my experience at the VFX, I think our market, they are pretty disciplined lot, our brokers and so on and so forth in the custody. So we don't have many issues. Everyone knows what they're supposed to do, and that makes our job quite easy.
All right. Thank you so much for that. Miss Sandra, I do have a question for you. What has been driving the increase in listings across sectors such as mining and real estate?
All right, thank you for that question. So these companies have really been wanting to raise USD on the platform. So they've actually seen VFX as a platform where they can raise their USD to fund their operations. And also, if you look at our regulations, our rules, they are a bit flexible or streamlined such that they are friendly to these companies. The requirements are pretty simple. They've been simplified such that compliance issues, as Hilarious has said, our rules are pretty much streamlined such that it's very easy even for you to understand them. And then the incentives that I spoke of earlier, they are also playing a key part in attracting these mining and real estate companies. So even as a country, we're seeing a lot of development in real estate. We're seeing a lot of development in terms of even the mining sector. It's growing at an increasing rate. Some would say the performance of a stock market can mirror what's happening in the economy. And I think from the listings that we're getting, it mirrors exactly what's happening in the economy. The mining sector is growing, so is the mining sector on the VFX. The real estate, there's a lot of real estate developments that is happening. The real estate on the VFX as well is also growing. So there is that reflection of what's happening in the economy, as well as the incentives that are offered on VFX, the flexible regulations that are there on VFX as well. And obviously, most importantly, as I mentioned, the ability to raise money in US dollars.
All right. Would you say there are any specific initiatives or programs put in place to support these sectors?
Yes, there's quite a number of retech. There's two initiatives that we have put in place in order to support these initiatives. So we've got what we call the VFX Venture Board, which specializes mostly in attracting mining companies. This is where we're looking for your small to medium mining companies to come onto the market, raise money to fund their operation. So the rules for this particular venture board have been streamlined or have been drafted such that they are specific for mining companies. And then when it comes to real estate, there are also rules that streamlines for real estate companies. So for real estate, it's either you're going to come on the company as a real estate company, like the likes of your West Prop, or you're going to come onto the market as a REIT. So a REIT is simply a fund that has been built so that retail investors can have access to investing in big properties without having to part with a large amount of money. So, for example, if you've got $10, you can be able to invest into a mall and have a small unit in that mall. So, those products are what we call REITs, and we're really seeing an interest in terms of REITs. You know, Zimbabwe, we are highly people are. So companies are really moving into real estate. So we've really been seeing that growth. And those REIT rules, they've really played a key role in that.
Thank you so much for that response. Mr. Hilarious, what role does technology play in strengthening clearing and settlement efficiency?
Mm-hmm. No, thank you very much. So I think when we look at technology, we are looking primarily at our systems. So our systems, have to be up to date in terms of, messaging with market participants. We have to make sure that our systems are able, to support, for example, straight-through processing. That means that you reduce the amount of time that you need to clear and settle a transaction. And most importantly, you're then looking at, things like reducing the incidence of errors, which you would want to reduce as much as possible when you are in safe custody or you are, been given trust over investor assets. So I think when we look at where we are going as a depository and what also happens in other markets, I think we are trying to push for a situation where we've got more of our processes automated. The processes that we do with the market participants and even our internal processes, we want to make sure that those are automated. And I think we are very close to achieving that. We are in the process of migrating into a new CSD system, which has already been rolled out to the market. I'm glad that as of today, our market participants are actually participating in a parallel run of that new system. And the feedback that we gather is that the market participants are happy with the features. And so part of what we are going to do after we have rolled out the new system, in the next phase, we want them to be able to integrate our market participants to make sure that we remove the manual processes that are involved between us and them, and once we've achieved that, we are certain that that will benefit investors in a big way. So technology, yes, indeed, it's a very important aspect of what we do as a depository. So there have been some talk, in recent years, people talking about, things like blockchain technology. I don't want to venture much into that at this stage, but we are also very much aware of those developments, and we play a keen eye to make sure that we don't lag behind. So I think in terms of technology, again, what we have also recently done was that previously the exchange as a group was not directly integrated onto the SWIFT platform. Or SWIFT provides a messaging platform for the exchange of financial messages. So it automates the exchange of financial messages. It supports cross-border exchange of messages, and so on and so forth. So we recently onboarded onto the SWIFT platform as the ZSE group, but it then has a profound impact, especially on the VFEX depository, in the sense that what it does is that it then positions the depository onto the global arena, because SWIFT is global. So we are hoping to leverage on that technology so that we can support more of cross-border settlements, which will then ultimately support perhaps cross-border inflows onto the VFX as a market, as it were. So technology really is very important. And if we are to remain relevant as a CSD, as a VFX CSD, then we must have the right technology to support it. And I think my colleagues in VFX markets would be happy if they know that the platform is highly capable technology-wise. They can go out and sell their products knowing that they've got a stable settlement platform, which is highly automated and efficient. So technology indeed is a key part of what we do.
Yes, that's very true. I'm sure the audience can agree that we are in the technology era,
Indeed.
and we have systems such as the blockchain, as you mentioned, and
Mhm.
artificial intelligence. So I'm excited that you are incorporating these systems here at VFX, and we
Indeed.
look forward to hearing more in terms of blockchain and artificial intelligence.
Indeed.
Miss Sandra, let's speak misconceptions. What must miscon- what misconceptions do potential issuers typically have about listing on VFX?
Thank you, Anashi, for that question. So when we meet issuers, we've often had some misconceptions where issuers tell us that listing on VFX is rather listing on an exchange is complicated. Some say that it's not easy to secure a meeting with someone from the exchange. But we have really streamlined our rules in terms of the requirements when you want to come onto the market. Even when you compare the VFX with other exchanges, our requirements in terms of the minimum subscribed capital, for example, on your equity, we are looking at raising a minimum of 3 million US dollars. Some markets require 5 million, 10 million. In terms of the submissions that you're required to do once you're listed, we require those to be in electronic format. You don't necessarily need to have some printed copies, etc., etc. So we've really tried to streamline the requirements to make them as easy as possible. And then in terms of some people think that it's very difficult to meet personnel from the exchange. We are trying as much as possible to be available. So our VFX business development team always stands ready to meet with any potential clients that wants to meet with us. We are ready to provide them with guidance. We are ready to hold their hands throughout the listing process. So if anyone is thinking about listing on the VFX, I think we can be able to assist them. They can email us on our email address, which is operations@vfx.exchange, or you can even walk into our offices. We'll be able to assist you. And then in terms of the requirements, we are also happy to explain or to make them as simplified as possible so that any ordinary person can be able to comprehend them even if they do not have any understanding of the market, etc. So we're happy to meet with any potential new issues that want to come onto the market.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm sure our audience does feel welcome to come here to come here at VFX to understand more about the kind of products and services you are providing here as a stock exchange company. Ms. Sandra, VFX has introduced innovative products such as the REITs and the depository receipts. How do these contribute to market confidence, and how does VFX engage stakeholders to drive growth?
All right, thank you very much. I think in addition to adding these projects, as we have already said, we are there in the market to see what innovations are there in the market. We are trying to move with the times. In as much as we are in this other part of the world, we're trying to bring as much innovation as we can on the market. So in terms of, we believe that bringing these new products onto the market plays a key role in boosting the confidence of the market itself. So bringing in of the REITs and the depository receipts does really play a key role in that bringing confidence. So when it comes to REITs, as I had mentioned before, to say that REITs can give you exposure to a property which is professionally managed with a minimum of about $10 if you trade through our mobile platforms. So I'll give an example to say the Highland Park Mall. You can be an owner of a unit there at Highland Park Mall with just investing about sorry, can I give another example? So, for example, we do have got a REIT, the Eagle REIT on the VFX. You can invest on the Eagle REIT and expose yourself to a professionally managed property portfolio with a minimum of 10 United States dollars. Then when it comes to depository receipts, you can invest in a company on the New York Stock Exchange whilst you're seated here in Zimbabwe, and you also do not have to worry about the regulations that are there in New York. You can straight invest into your Caledonia Mining Corporation, and you already have got exposure to a foreign listed company without having to go through the hurdles of foreign exchange controls. Whenever a dividend is paid in a company on the New York Stock Exchange or on the London Stock Exchange, you can get it into your account while seated in the comfort of your home. So some of these projects have really brought innovation into Zimbabwe. They are exposing Zimbabwe into international markets. They are really bringing the stock exchange to everyone's doorstep.
Yes, thank you so much for that. If I understood correctly, Miss Sandra, are you saying me and my 10 USD can come and invest in VFX and actually get a return from that $10?
All you need to do is to go on Play Store or your Apple Store and you download the VFX Direct application. So it will prompt you through a number of steps where you are opening your account and inputting your KYC. So in that, you just need to ensure that you've got a passport size photo of yourself. You need to ensure that you've got proof of residence. You also need to ensure that you've got a picture of your ID. So you open the account from the comfort of your home. After that, that information will be sent to a broker that you select on the platform. So they will do the KYC verification. Once they are happy, the account will be approved. The turnaround time is usually 72 hours. After 72 hours, you can deposit your money through the bank or through your inbox. After that, you are able to invest in any company on the VFX with just $10.
Thank you so much for that. We will definitely invest in VFX. Mr. Hilarious, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
What is the depository doing to attract and support foreign investors?
So I think in terms of foreign investors, I will try to answer the question in two parts. I will obviously have to acknowledge the work that my colleagues from VFX markets do, where I think part of it, she has highlighted it. You want to come to invest your $10 US, you can do so without challenges through our direct platforms. But obviously, that doesn't speak mostly to foreign investors. So I think from a CSD perspective, what we have been trying to do is that we have been benchmarking ourselves to international standards, which is what the foreign investors would be looking at when they are, looking at VFX as an investment destination. And clearing and settlement is a very key aspect of how the foreign investors perceive, a market. It becomes key because that's where the risks are. So I think part of what we do is try to make sure that we abide as much as is possible by international standards. For example, we are a participant to an annual World Federation of CSDs questionnaire, which is basically a risk assessment framework. We also participate on the Association of Global Custodians questionnaire again. They've now tried to merge these two questionnaires into one. So on that basis, they are able to assess our clearing and settlement infrastructure on an international scale, and then come up with the ratings, and so on and so forth. And so I think that has also helped again. I think in terms of us, attracting potential foreign investors onto the VFX market. Then you obviously have to look at what we've also done. I've already alluded to that earlier on in terms of reducing the settlement cycle. There was a recent newspaper article that was written for the Nigerian Stock Exchange, where they moved from T+3 to T+2. So when they were asked, they said, we benchmarked ourselves to Zimbabwe. And it's happy days for us. It means that we are leading the curve in terms of making sure that our clearing and settlement processes are in line with international trends. So you find that, for example, the US moved to T+1, I think, late last year, if not early this year. So we see more and more global markets reducing their settlement cycles, and we are paying a keen eye, and we also want to follow suit. So that is also part of what we are trying to do in terms of attracting foreign investors. But like I highlighted earlier on to say that we are now live on SWIFT, we are still finalizing the integrations. But so what you find is that when you do that, it also then positions you to perhaps support things like offshore settlement, leveraging on the SWIFT messaging platform. So we are also discussing with some potential participants, international banks, who we can then be able to work with, in terms of perhaps, supporting things like offshore settlement, which is, I think, would be very appealing to foreign investors Obviously, the issue of repatriations is no longer an issue as it were some few years back, where I think mostly when the ZSC, foreign investors couldn't repatriate investment process. But I think that has been addressed by the VFX, and people can freely repatriate their investment process. But one can imagine what it means if we start doing offshore settlement. So we are also looking into that in order to attract foreign investors. So a number of things that we are doing. But ultimately, I think what is also important is to note that because the VFX is now part of the IFSC, therefore it means that we are positioning ourselves on the global market, and it's important. And we have to leverage on that as the CSD supporting them to make sure that foreign investors come on board.
Thank you so much for that. Yes, we are pleased that other markets all over the world are comparing themselves with the Zimbabwe's stock exchange market. Thank you so much. Yes, Ms. Sandra, what role does technology and data access, such as the Data Direct and VFX Direct, play in investor confidence?
So what technology does is that it increases transparency and usability as well as accessibility. So the platforms like the Data Direct that you mentioned, what it does is that it gives investors access to market reports on a daily basis. So if you sign up for your Data Direct, you are able to access market reports each and every day. You are able to access the price sheet so that you can be able to see the prices of all the companies. It also gives you access to historic information. So if you go on the Data Direct, you're also able to see information of trades that happened from So the Data Direct also has got historic data for information that has happened in the past. So once you open your account on Data Direct, which is accessible through our website, you have got access to all this information. So the VFX Direct is also playing a very important role in terms of accessibility. I mean, we spoke about the minimum of $10, which I believe is a minimum that is reasonable for every investor in Zimbabwe. So before we introduce the direct, the methodology of trading before was you go directly to your broker, which was posing a bit of challenges for your retail investors, because sometimes the minimums that were requested, some investors could not meet that minimum. So with a minimum of $10, we believe that where we have increased the transparency, we have increased the accessibility of these applications. So we are really embracing technology in terms of our operation. We are really embracing technology in terms of our operations, and we are really trying to bring the market to the people.
Thank you so much for that response. To wrap up, I do have one last question I would like to ask both of you. Looking ahead, what innovations can investors expect from VFX? Ms. Sandra, I may start with you.
Hi, thank you so much. I think one of the innovations I'd already mentioned earlier on, to say you can look forward to the venture board for your small to medium companies. So we are really working towards to make sure that no one is left behind in terms of your small and medium businesses. So this venture board will also include other sectors, your mining, agriculture, real estate, whatever sector you name it. And also, we're also looking into the commodity exchange where we'll allow trading of minerals on the platform. This is still something that we're still working on, trying to finalize everything else. The legislation is already out. It was published in 2024. So we are working towards the commodity exchange as well. So I think I would say there is more yet to come in terms of technology. We're also looking into doing your digital assets. It's still there in the future, but it's something that we're looking at right now. We're also looking at innovations to do with new products. We're also looking at increasing our current portfolio. So we also want to introduce your exchange traded funds on VFX, which we believe will give exposure to some foreign companies as well to our investors on the VFX. So there is a lot of work that we're doing, trying to catch up with the other markets. We're obviously benchmarking ourselves with international exchanges, and we're working to ensure that we become as innovative and as accessible and as flexible as they are.
Thank you so much. We do love to hear what companies are working on right now that investors can be excited about. I have the same question for you, Mr. Hilarious. What innovations can investors expect from VFX? Yes.
Indeed, thank you. From VFX to Postal. I
Yes,
think from the
indeed.
VFX side, it has been stated by my colleague. No, but certainly, I think one of the key things that I will look at is the possibility of, potentially further reducing the settlement cycle. But this is going to be a structured process. There are certain things that we must ensure that they are now possible in the bucket. For example, I mentioned earlier on straight through processing, integration with banks, integration with our settlement bank, the RBZ. So that becomes key, in terms of making sure that we can then be able to, further reduce the settlement cycle and help investors, enjoy the benefits that comes with that. Then I think I mentioned earlier on the process we are trying to, implement, where we are trying to see if we can support offshore settlement. So that also becomes key of what we are trying to do again. So that will be especially important for the VFX. Then I think in terms of our onboarding, of our clients. Remember when she said you can only come and invest with your $10, what she also forgot to mention was that you need to open your CSD account, obviously, through the direct platform if you are accessing the exchange through that route, or through a broker. So we want to digitize that onboarding process. I think part of what we are trying to do is then to integrate with the Registrar General's office, where your ID number, and so on and so forth, can be verified, through that integration. So that's part of and parcel of what we're trying to do, to try to automate everything that we do, so that we improve the investor experience. But I think critically important is to say the depository should then support the activities of the exchange. One, in terms of ensuring that the exchange is liquid. I think part of that is through the reduction of the settlement cycle, and so on and so forth. So I think we've got a number of initiatives, a number of things that we think we can offer our investors as a CSD. We are not looking ourselves at as a CSD in the traditional sense. We want to look ourselves as a player and as a market infrastructure provider who can then be able to enhance the overall investor experience on the VFX, whether a foreign investor or a local investor. So watch the space. We've got a number of things coming up. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Sandra and Mr. Hilarious. We are proud to hear the work that VFX has been doing in the last 5 years and the work they continue doing in the next 100 years plus. Again, thank you so much, Ms. Sandra. Thank you so much, Mr. Hilarious. We are really happy that you have made the time to explain more about VFX and the work that you have